Welcome to Advanced TV Herstory. I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams. This is the place where we connect the dots of TV and feminism to American culture and politics. If you like what you hear, head to tvherstory.com and listen into all of our archives that are categorized to make it easier to find what you're looking for. And also while you're there, please sign up for our newsletter. Promise I'll never sell your information. Now on with the show. Welcome, Advanced TV Herstoryans. I'm excited because this is our anniversary episode 2024. It's the episode that I do a lot of reflecting on when I write it, and I'm doing less writing out of every script than I used to back if you've ever listened to some of the earliest ones. I'll admit I was stiff and a little nervous, and now here we are doing video and riffing a little bit and having some fun, and also delivering, I think, an even more powerful message than I dreamed was possible back in 2015. Back then, I wasn't really sure where it was going to go, Advanced TV Herstory. It was a good name. It is a good name. I love it. But we have important work that we're bringing forward, and this episode sort of encapsulates why we are going in the direction we are, what it is that I'm thinking and what we're doing and how we're doing it. So I do these every summer because I started the podcast. It first launched on June 26th, 2015. And I think back to what has happened since last summer when I produced my anniversary episode. And I think to myself, well, it was only something that happened last month. And that was that somebody called me a documentarian. And it's not as part of a podcast episode. It's actually an interview that my writing colleague, Mary, and I were conducting with a very established and well-respected TV writer and professor. She called us documentarians for the work that we're doing, and it sort of struck me by surprise. And I thought to myself, well, I call myself an independent TV scholar a lot, with total respect to those in academia who do this for a living, who do the research and do the teaching for a living. But I went to Oxford Dictionary Online and I looked up documentarian, and there it is, an expert analyst of historic documents. So yes, that descriptor fits. I will take it. I will put the little merit badge on my sash, and I'm going to share more with you in this podcast about why we're doing much more of this analysis of historical documents, and the fact that, well, is a TV show a document? In my book, it is. Some other highlights of the podcast, the life of the podcast, here it is, since last summer. In January, I reformatted and really thought through how to recognize the women of TV who had passed in the year that had just ended. I think that's important. We're trying to celebrate entire careers and do justice to what sometimes can be a list of 25 or 30 or 40 women, particularly those who are regional producers or station managers or on-air talent that never have quite made it to the network news, or network sports, but have played a role. So it used to be called In Memoriam, and I kind of thought that was a little too dark. So I thought about it some more, and I thought about kind of when you have a script in front of you and you're rolling it out and it's just one bio after the next bio after the next bio. And I started thinking it feels like a parade. And so it's called the Parade of Accomplished Women. And this past year, I had the honor of inaugurating it with a good collaborator, friend, contributor, Ashley Pacini. We honored these women in a virtual parade, and she knows a lot about what it is that they've done. We complemented each other quite nicely, and I'm grateful for Ashley joining me on kind of short notice. What's more, it's been fun embarking on my project, which was TV talk shows. There's just something wonderful and delicious and unexpected about what can be uncovered when you start researching very famous moments in TV talk shows, because that heyday was, for the most part, the 20th century, and there's not nearly as much preserved as you would think there is. But daytime audiences were different, like the audiences that were watching, not the ones in studio. The advertising budgets for household products was endless, and so daytime TV was such a rich life form. And selfishly, the TV talk show thematic series that's going to be running throughout the next couple of years gave me the chance to finally bring forth a Vivian Leigh appearance on a 1958 Edward R. Murrow sort of Zoomy, early Zoom talk show format thing. And I love that episode. I loved Vivian Lee in it. It's one of the few times we ever saw her speak of her own mind for TV. Few women of her time would have had the confidence, or you can call it ego, but also the grace to speak with total candor. This was a data point. It's a snapshot of sorts of where feminism was in 1958, at least in the arts, coming from such an established and highly acclaimed actor. Now, going back a year earlier, I continue to reflect on remarks that were made by Mallory Lewis, who is Sherry Lewis's daughter, Lamb Chop's sister. Sherry would be proud of Mallory doing all the work she is to maintain the legacy and the presence of Lamb Chop out there as the philosopher and influencer that she is. But Mallory, in our interview, and this is from November 2022, said to me that she had been raised with the saying that history is written by the victors. And honestly, I think about that every day because what we're doing here at Advanced TV Herstory is literally capturing herstory and the stories that really have never been told or are told in dribs and drabs across books and videos that you can find online and archives. And I have not delved into any university archives yet, any of the historic papers of people, because I don't know that you'd see me for a couple of months if that was to happen. Because listeners, given everything that's happened in the past 2 years, courtesy of the United States Supreme Court, I feel a greater sense of urgency than ever to tell the stories and to capture them. These are the stories of, yes, the women who won on television, the ones who are in front of the camera, behind the camera, have hoisted trophies in recognition from their peers of their excellence. But then there are a lot of stories of these very same women, and once they start telling their background or their journey or who they knew, they are telling stories of life, of failure, of trial, of challenge, of racism, misogyny, all of it. And we can learn from every single one of them. We have to, because the world is not going to populate libraries and podcast players with these kinds of stories. And while I don't have an extensive podcast production team like Julia Louis-Dreyfus does for her award-winning Wiser Than Me, and yes, I highly recommend you give it a listen, because I think she and I are thinking these very same thoughts. But I am making contact with many women who have wisdom to share. Spending an hour chatting with Annie Potts about her nonprofit, The Heart Channels, it became our Thanksgiving episode, and I love it. I encourage you to listen. It's Annie Potts. If you haven't listened yet, please do. She is the real deal. She came from humble means, and she speaks her values. She's quite a storyteller, as you might expect, and she exudes the same confidence and feminism and grace as, say, Vivian Lee. Only with Annie, the Southern accent is real. Another highlight for me has been the feedback and the encouragement that many of you have sent via the monthly newsletter that you receive in your inboxes. If you don't already get it, I encourage you to go to tvherstory.com. The first thing you grab will be the pop-up. Go ahead and give me your information. There's never any advertising in it other than, links to past episodes or articles that I have found. Your information will never be shared or sold. I am the only person who has your information. The newsletter is my way of sharing with you what I'm reading and what I'm watching and what my projects are. But I prefer to send it to you directly because it means more to me and I can share it differently than if I'm trying to put it out on social media. I don't want strangers necessarily to see it. I don't, worse yet, want toxic comments from trolls. I can handle a toxic comment from a troll, but honestly, it brings me down. So please sign up today. Or if you want to see what one of them looks like, I'm happy to send one to you. Just shoot me a note on Twitter and DM me whatever on Instagram. Send an email to advancedtvherstory@gmail.com. I will send you a couple back issues and we'll get to know each other further. I would really like to hear from you. Now, last summer, again, this has been a very busy year, Last summer, you may recall about this time, the entertainment industry was basically in utter shutdown. It was at a standstill. The Writers Guild had gone out on strike in May, and about 3 weeks later, SAG-AFTRA took on big issues, and they walked out the door too. It was about really important stuff. This was a very large contract that Fran Drescher and her team and the Writers Guild all put together, and it took many months to settle. It was about streaming and the residuals that come out of that and the statistics that are a part of streaming that nobody gets to see, about artificial intelligence, and it was about money and a few other things. And we'll talk about one of those other things in a second. But I found that the strike left me with this great opportunity to share more with you all about union histories, these unions' histories, and their work. I was joined by TV writer and former WGA president Victoria Riskin, and she brought a human and humorous element to a very important and information-filled episode. I really encourage you to listen to it. And now it's in hindsight, but at the time she was not privy to any of the negotiations, but rather she was telling the story of the union as she had learned it as both a member and a family member from the union, and then finally a president. The contract that was settled, or the contracts, I should say, for the different unions, once they were settled and the details were released, it was really quite fascinating. And it also presented what is surely to be challenges that they need to address along the way. Among one of the sections was new requirements around intimacy coordination. And I found this fascinating. It's the notion that an intimacy coordinator supports the production team to ensure that actors and the crew, everybody involved in creating a sensitive scene, can do so and deliver good quality work. Mostly it is to prepare an environment that makes the actors most comfortable. But this is newly recognized by the unions and the studios, and it's included in the contract that there is intimacy coordinator offered if one is, or is created if one is requested. And I contacted a woman who I literally had met at an airport in 2018 who was on her way to training for intimacy coordinators. Life is good, because I believe in kismet. Daytime drama vet and now a respected name in upstate New York regional theater, Yvonne Perry, dished some fun episodes from her years in the soaps and her experiences that led her to seek out the training. That interview is available in audio and video formats. I encourage you to check it out. As I've said, it's been a busy year, not just delivering really, I think, fun interviews, quality interviews. You know, we're digging sort of in the beyond the recesses of what it means to bring quality television to the screen, and a lot of the backstory, which doesn't get talked about nearly as much. Everybody wants to interview Annie Potts, I bet. But behind the scenes of this podcast, wow, we've been doing quite a bit too, and maybe you've noticed it. This video that we're preparing right now is newly established here in January 2024. Nivea Lopez joined our team. She is responsible for sort of bringing the quality up, both in terms of advising me how to best prepare, and then doing the editing that it takes alongside Mary Lou Morose, who is the audio editor. These two have eyes and ears that I absolutely trust. Aren't they doing a great job? Most importantly, I am pleased that they take such pride in delivering you a quality visual and audio experience. Now, if you've gone to the website to sign up for the newsletter, don't just back out. No, stay for a second, please, because we've offered you a whole new way to binge our archives. Advanced TV Herstory episodes are now categorized. They're organized, going all the way back to 2015, even those ones that I stumbled and read from a script. I thought I was doing pretty well for the time. But they're sorted by topic now. So now you can find the topics that you like and just go off on your own binge, or share some of them, topics that don't necessarily interest you, but may interest someone in your circle who thinks like we do. Lastly, and this was a lot of work as well, we were recognized as a podcast on IMDb. So as a result, we have a podcast page. And every time we produce an episode, up goes that episode with a description, not a link, but a description. And if one of the interviewees or an interviewee also is on IMDb as an actor or a writer, producer, whatever, then we can tag them. So if you really kind of want to get a sense as to who some of the bigger names are that I have interviewed in the past, you will see Margaret Cho from The American Girl. And she's such a famous and smart and influential comedian because she's speaking so much more about inclusion and intersectionality. The episodes with three-time daytime Emmy Award winner Katie McLean. A very fun interview with producer and Facts of Life and Living single star Kim Fields and Annie Potts, who of course is Meemaw from Young Sheldon, the Designing Women's Mary Jo Shively, and from Ghostbusters, Janine Melnitz. What's in store for the coming year, you ask? To a great degree, I am keeping my topics list flexible, recognizing I want to continue to go down the rabbit hole of TV talk show moments because that's too much fun. And it's a nice change of pace from the research that I'm doing for another project. But by staying flexible, I can also be timely and relevant in this very fast-paced, changing world. My selection is also driven by the connections that I've been making through my research and writing. In any given month, my co-author Mary and I are attempting to communicate to or actually connect with women and men who wrote and produced a lot of progressive television. Not all of them necessarily will make it to the podcast, but it's fueling me and also making me think in different ways as I continue to build my own knowledge base. Most of these people, because they are writers and producers, have never written a memoir because they could never probably get the attention of a publisher. Few we have spoken with don't necessarily even think that the work that they did making this progressive television, a whole host of series, that they really were cognizant of its feminist significance. And they were just doing their jobs to deliver a paycheck. And I find that, again, it brings me back to this mission that we have, which is to tell those stories and create the context of connecting the dots between TV and feminism with American culture and politics. And some of these folks, it was just so much a part of their life that they could not see the forest for the trees. Now, we're doing this partly because there's actually more TV available for viewing than ever before, the historic, the older series. Low profile free streaming services, the bigger streamers, the platforms have definitely stepped up to scour for good vintage TV. And that's available for cable subscribers or cord cutters, whoever you are, you know what those streaming services are, apart from the big ones. And while we can only hope that they will stay in business and that the big ones continue to find value in offering these series, I gotta say, I am quite concerned that relying on paid streaming or free streaming as the source of vintage TV is filled with risk. It is. The streamers are all owned, for the most part, by a handful of huge corporations who honestly don't care that you would rather see a different world, not just 4 episodes of a different world, but the entire series, than The Cosby Show. And we know why. Or that some of those corporations will not fund the lawyers that it would take to deliver Murphy Brown or China Beach to a whole new generation of viewers. They just don't care. Moreover, it could all go away tomorrow. So, since I started this podcast in 2015, and my husband and I have moved 3 times to increasingly smaller homes, well, I'm back in Minneapolis. My books and my DVDs surround me, and I even have a VHS player at the ready. Because a radical movement that's infiltrated the Supreme Court and Congress, and I don't have aluminum foil offline here, but think about it. The Supreme Court and Congress wants to erase some pretty significant progress of the rights of persons without power. If there is incentive to do that, then there is incentive to take away some of our most inspiring TV. As I enter my 10th year of podcasting, yes, connecting the dots of TV and feminism to American culture and politics, I pledge to you that I will continue to respect your time. I will deliver quality and educational messages and do what it takes to get it to a point where it's understandable, where what was is now seen in 2024 lenses for the amount of work or risk that was taken to get it to where it is. Because I want this podcast and all of those TV stories to inspire you to remain strong and kind and get involved and care about the big picture as well as the small picture, or your neighbors or your friends or your coworkers. This is what will get us to a stronger tomorrow. You and this country that we love, our YI podcast. I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams.